This is not the greenwood of old. There is a stream in the woods that carries a dark enchantment. Do not touch the water. Cross only by the stone bridge. The very air of the forest is heavy with illusion. It will seek to enter your mind and lead you astray.
Lead us astray? What does that mean?
You must stay on the path. Do not leave it. If you do, you'll never find it again. No matter what may come, stay on the path.
Come on, we must reach the mountain before the sun sets on Durin's Day.
Durin's Day.
Let's go.
The one thing we need to do. Welcome to Batman's review of his gaming collection. This is from Iron Crown Enterprises, Northern Mirkwood, and for MERP, the Middle Earth role-playing game, the original. Now, this book here actually is not. It is an original copy, and it cost me way too much money. I had my original version of this was in my parents' house when we were still cleaning it up. It was in the bathroom for light reading material, and it disappeared. I am not going to go into what went down after that, but eventually I had to acquire it, and because it, you have the whole set, you want the set to be solid. There's part 2, which is Southern Mirkwood. They came out with a later second edition version of, if you will, of a combination of both North and South Mirkwood, but pretty much the same thing. So this is Northern Mirkwood, the Wood Elves realm, and then some. And nice little additional thing. Was like the second tier of material to come out for first edition. The first handful of source books and modules came out, and then these were much bigger and thicker and have more detail in them, which is what we like. Generally speaking, you go into a lot of the information and areas and stuff like that. It included a single page copy of the maps, which, like I said, I don't remove these things. This was the copy that I would often get a Xerox copy of back in the day, when you could go to a local grocery store, convenience store, and for 10 cents, a mere dime, could put this in a copy machine and get a copy made. Nowadays, you just copy it off of your own book. So, this would be the northern half, southern. What is that? 2 different versions of the same thing. But we also have intact this is the color version, and it's stapled in, so I'm not going to pull it out. And I always like these beautiful color, and they make great wall hangings, which was a downside because all of the early books I made a mistake of pulling these out, and while I still have most of the maps, I have some that I do not have anymore, and I cannot find a replacement for that doesn't cost an arm and a leg. The other thing about the style of the maps themselves, I became so enamored in this stuff, and this is based off of a lot of Tolkien's own works, so I made all my maps after that. If I really had time to put effort into them, I did it in this scale as often as I could, using the same emblems. And these are actually emblems, or you don't think so, but if you look up cartography, you'll find that a lot of these patterns represent different types of terrain is used in the actual topography, which is probably where Tolkien got his ideas from. So when we talk about Northern Mirkwood, you got to kind of talk about the primary beasts and races that inhabit it. So we got our introduction, and I don't really need to go into depth because you can see the movie, you'll see Jackson's versions of it, and his quite spot on. And if you go by the, and I don't know that he didn't have influences from this material. If he didn't, he did from some other Tolkien's works. And anyhow you look at it, really good job. So we got the great eagles, the dragons, the giant spiders, the bears, the wolves, and then we talk about the flea and the Great Plague. In the year roughly 1650 to 1652 to 1656. 58, this plague came out of the east and decimated a lot of the humans and animals in the west. and in various locations the plague was much more furious than others. And it played its role here in northern Mirkwood. It probably was not nearly as bad as it did in the more populated regions of Gondor to the south, and because the fact that most people tend to be reclusive and or isolationists to some degree, so that very fact did play its role, but the flea still got to them because the flea gets carried by a number of other critters and so on and so forth. Explains the shadow on the forest to some degree. As Gandalf mentions, it's not like it used to be. The inhabitants, the ways of life, break down the wood elves, thundrels people, Legolas's people, what they brought and what they provided, daily life. And we have the dwarves, great dwarven history, dwarves of the Iron Hills, the Northmen, and all their variety, brief Northman history, daily life, then some other inhabitants where you got orcs and trolls and other oddballs running around, politics and powers of the region, places of note, settlement patterns, things like that. Here's a map of Thundrel's Elvish caves. You have to make it that is what you want. They actually have a module on Thundrel's kingdom, and we will eventually get to that. It's quite colorful. And so, an Orcish citadel. Don't ask me to pronounce that word. This is actually the ruin of a first age orc hold. Durg is composed of a dilapidated tower, small cave complex, and soul surrounded by unmortared wall, perched on a granite outcrop. Sarngoring. This is kind of like a counterpoint to the Dol Guldur in the south. This is a holding or a keep set up by agents of the Dark Lord that predates Sauron. It goes way back. So, and there's some history there, and there's a current evil wizard living there, if you will, and playing influence in areas in the north, and it makes for some potential adventure material. We have Erebor, the Lonely Mountain. Once again, there's quite a bit of generic information here to let you operate and run a campaign if you want. And then there's this circular carnage between the valley stream. This is a burial site of ancient Northman kings, and I briefly wonder if Peter Jackson didn't get, because there's a scene where Gandalf goes and visits what's supposedly the tombs of the Nine Nazgul, where their remains were secreted away, etc., etc., etc. And I wonder if they didn't get an idea from some of this for that, because that actually doesn't exist in the novelization. Tolkien did not bring that up unless it's in some of the secondary notes that I've never seen, and that's possible because I'm not gonna acknowledge that I'm a master. I have mastered everything there is about Tolkien, but I have read a lot of material, and his son Christopher has put out a huge amount of material, and co-written with other authors, of course, based off of his father's notes and works and things like that, and it does a great job of kind of filling in some of the missing links, if you will, and or what he supposed through conversations and letters and correspondence he'd had with his father, what his father's intentions were for something that may never got addressed. Just one of those things that's, I don't know, call it a geek thing, but that just always interested me. So then we have suggestions for adventures and game master aids. Adventuring in northern Rohirrim, action in the withered hearth. As brief mention, as the name implies, the Great Basin on the eastern side of the White Mountain, or the Grey Mountains, or the Erd Muthan, is hardly hospitable. Dry lake beds, dehydrated swamps, scorched moors mark the valley, a home for little dragons. For thousands of years, the great worms have claimed this territory as a vast abode for their quote nests. Some particularly lordly fire drakes inhabit many mountain caverns and hollows, hills found in the area. Most of the cold drakes choose to reside in the higher altitudes, either among the mountains rim overlooking the valley or within the passes in the northeastern spur of the range. Dragons generally take blah blah blah, goes into their history and habits and things like this. It also notes down here that there's roughly about 20 dragons up in this neck of the woods, even after the death of Smaug. Dragons are still potential problem for Middle-earth, although the lion's share of them tend to be either far lesser capable or adventurous than Smog and keep to the north of the Withered Hearth, or are complacent with where their position, and unless you go up there and muck with them, they, you know how it goes. Venturing in the northern forest and the mountains of Mirkwood, actions in the mountains, actions in the wider woods, the river valleys, the Long Lake adventures, all this stuff is pretty much covered. A lot of different possible things that you can do here. And we have our master military chart, basically stats for a lot of different stuff. It's one of the things that I have always, and I say this over and over and over again, I always like these from Merp. ICE did an awesome job. So I have a load of pre-set up NPCs for encounters, and some have purpose, like here's the Wood Elves, the King's Guard, Tender Lords, various young whatever. Then we got the Woodsmen and some goblins and orcs and bears, oh my, etc. Right? All nice stuff. Beasts of the Northern Wilderland. So if you want to have an encounter with a fell beast or a giant, here's the stats basics that you can use, and you don't have to do a lot. Just grab your notebook or work them right out of here. Really easy. Really nice master NPC chart. Special herbs that can be found. Economic tables, campaigns and adventure suggestions, suggested settings, everyday life in other times. So running around in different times history. All right, the troubled Third Age, around roughly 1640, into the age, whatever. A nice, really useful campaign module. And as I've said in the past, these sort of things can be entire campaigns. You can run years, real world years worth of campaigns just out of one of these, and having scores of them. Well, you have a lifetime of unlimited possibilities if you have a dedicated group of players who want to run through this particular world and scenario after another. Awesome stuff. And once again, I appreciate you guys. Hit a like if you like it. Hit a dislike if you don't like it. Tell your friends. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed. All the other blah, blah, blah that you hear. You know, my grandfather was a minister for 50 odd years, and he didn't believe in waving the pan around. Here's the offering plate. I'll set it by the door in the back. You can contribute or not contribute. And contribute, of course, is always most welcome, but we're not here for that. We're not here for the glory or for building some huge channel, gathering sheer numbers of subscribers, etc., because I'm a realist. I'm a pessimist. It's not going to ever happen, at least not with what I do anyway, and the way and the style that I do. I mean, I'm just saying. And like it or don't, those of you I've had a number of people who really enjoyed my Star Trek series of the games that I had for my Star Trek from back in the day, and we had quite a bit of dialogue going on there, and I appreciate it, really do. Always enjoy talking about a lot of this stuff. Some of them have more passion than others, and sometimes the discussions might have been a little shorter than intended because of time constraints with my work. I work absurdly strange hours. I honestly cannot explain that. I mean, I've got a Monday tomorrow that's 6 or 7 hours during the morning, 7 in the morning to whenever I'm done. And then I got one single job at 9 o'clock at night. So I'll come home, maybe get a nap in, get supper, and then have to get back out there and get up and go out and do one little job. Right? And some days it's just the other way around. You know, I have nothing to do during the day and then a whole pile of stuff at night, or I'll work on overnight where I'm out all night long. It's just weird things all the time. And that's my story.